So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Module 2 of the Global Teacher Training Program here at IIU. I am Professor Dr. Lisa White, and I am coming to you from the USA, specifically Arizona, USA. I am a speaker, trainer, coach, also here at IIU, a global professor and accreditation director, and recently appointed co-founder USA. And it's my honor to serve and sit with you and go over some really pertinent and important information to all of us. I wouldn't go over my long, boring, long, lengthy accolades and profile, but what I'd like to share with you is that I started off as an educator at the age of 17 years old. I was asked to support students in my community right out of high school by tutoring them. And they needed tutoring in math and English specifically. But as I started to tutor, attempted to tutor a couple of students to start with, it took me a while to decide because I had other plans to, be a flight attendant, to be a banker, because they seem to be more glamorous jobs. All along, I'd already been working in what we call Sunday school, as a teacher and a helper, and even as a secretary. Very early at 14, I was in leadership roles in church. So at 17, when I was asked, I was kind of hesitant because I had other plans for my career and wanted to be in the corporate world, high heels, a nice pocketbook, not too long, not too short skirt, and a nice jacket in the counter, working in what we call the air conditioning. So I was born and raised in Guyana, South America, before I naturalized here in the US quite a few years now. However, once I started working with a couple of the students, I found that they were not only struggling in math and English, they really struggled with reading and more specifically comprehension. And for me, as a thinker, and I guess I learned later on as a naturally born gifted teacher, it's for me to get to the source of the student's problem and serve them from that place to lift them up. Because if the foundation is not set right, then everything else we build on top of that foundation is rocky, so to speak. So what do I do? How do I help these students to not only read, but to understand what it is they're reading? Because if a student cannot understand what they're reading, how do they answer test questions? And therefore, that's why their scores were so low. They totally were brilliant, but they just could not read and comprehend at a level that they should be, being 8, 9, and 10. So I looked into it, and I literally asked my family members to purchase me Hooked on Phonics, which is a total reading kit that I had seen for years and years advertising on TV. And then the government offered a training program for individuals to become reading and literacy trainers in the country. Very competitive programs, hundreds of people applied, but I believe it was about 80 of us that were selected to be trained. And that program was called On the Wings of Words. So getting that credential behind me and having the tool of Hooked on Phonics, I combined the two together to create a literacy program. Before you knew it, I had a full head-on learning center just before my 18th birthday. And I had at least 30 something students enroll from all ages, and I had to separate them. And some people got on the bandwagon pretty early. It's like, well, can you work with my kindergarten student and teach her how to read now? She's very smart. I promise you, if you give her a shot, she will do the work and I will help her. So we grew from 30 something to 100 plus, had to train other teachers very early to support me in my role. And that went on to grand summer programs. So that's how my career started as an educator. My mom at the time had a young growing preschool, which she started out of our living room. And then we constructed a building and we shared it for the literacy center and the preschool for several years. Later on, as I went into college, I started to teach literacy again to remedial students. I was hired in an organization that created a school for school dropouts between the ages of 15, and even I had a student up to 30 something to teach them math and English and literacy, actually English and literacy. As the years move on, I again continued my own business. And then once I moved to the USA, I moved into what I was doing back home in Guyana, and that is administration and directorship for early childhood education programs, starting programs in the state of Florida, contracting to open preschools and childcare facilities, working in law and regulation also within the state of Florida, moved to Arizona. And still, after being in corporate America for some years, I went right back to the classroom and taught again. And my journey, again, I only was able to teach for 1 year before they snuck me back up in administration. So at the present moment, one of my roles, as you read my profile, I'm also still working in the field of education as well, in early childhood education, leadership management, operations management, where I get to overlook a number of teachers, large number of teachers, and then specifically a core group as I run the operations of a government nonprofit program. So I've come from a long journey of, for me at the core, when I taught about, if you check out my platform, I talk a lot about discovering and knowing your why and your purpose. And a lot of people are surprised after reading all my accolades that I tell them at the core of what I do and who I am a teacher first. So I get madly excited about stepping into the room, training and working with teachers. And I'm so happy and blessed to be a part of your journey today, wherever you are in the world, specifically here in India. So I don't like to carry on with a boring presentation or training. I like to call it interactive. So please get ready as we go along. If you're taking notes, feel free to ask questions. There'll be a point for us to interact. And so what are we going to be talking about in my module here over the next 3 days? We will be looking at, we're here at the overview portion. We'll be looking at what constitutes a good teacher. And I'm going to share with you in that portion, top 10 keys to being a successful teacher. And then we'll move into the third section, which is what is high quality professional development? We all know that teachers are responsible, most places around the globe, to find their own means of continuing their education. And most countries ask for something called CEUs, continuing education credits, or some form of saying, I'm not stuck on my degree or my training from of old, but I'm continuing my education in that process. And we'll talk some more about that. Then we'll look at number 4, characteristics of good instructional design. And number 5, preparing to teach in the virtual school. As we all know, 2020 came and it hit us in the education system. The impact was great, as many of us had schools shut down and our classrooms were either on Zoom, or I've actually seen some teachers only delivering information by mail. The struggle was truly real in 2021. I feel last year we kind of settled the dust a little bit. Then we would look at e-readiness. So without further ado, I want us to jump right into what makes a good teacher. And so we all had at least one favorite teacher throughout our education journey. My prayer is that you did. And a lot of times, if you are working as a principal, educator of any sorts in the field, you might have been touched very deeply by what I like to call, or most of us call, a favorite teacher. So to begin our exercise, I know that it is coming towards the end of your day. Most of you might have been in the classroom all day today, or just work all day. So let's spend just a little bit, just about 60 to 90 seconds. And I want you to, wherever you are, if you are not driving, if you're in a space where you can sit for a moment and you can close your eyes and think back of some part of your educational journey, whether it was in kindergarten or even in college. And I want you to think about your favorite teacher. Which teacher was your favorite teacher? You see their face. Do you remember their smile or their frown? Or did you remember them supporting you in particular moments where you struggled as a student? Why was this teacher your favorite teacher? What about him or her or that stood out to you as helping you feel most supported as a student and simply as just a human? Just think for a moment, your favorite teacher. And I want you to hold that image with me as we go along this particular section of the module. So I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. And now I want you to complete this sentence, whether officially on paper or in your head. When I was at school, the best teacher was, and I want you to give yourself a name. He or she was my best and favorite teacher because. All right, so take a deep breath and you can open your eyes if you had them closed. And I wanted to share with you just a little bit about my favorite teacher. It was my high school teacher. His name was Mr. Patterson, and he passed away a couple of years ago. God rest his soul. Why was he my favorite teacher? Well, as a student, we have different things. Students have different things happening in the household. And many times as teachers, we see and we observe those things, and not very many of us take action or become involved because we're like, that's not my pay grade. I hear teachers talking about things not being included in their job description because today we're burdened with so much. But Mr. Patterson, he was able to see me beyond my excellent performance in the classroom. And he was able to take note of some things that was happening with me that needed attention on the social work level to intervene for me. And so Mr. Patterson talked to the headmistress at the time, which would be the principal, if that makes a better word for you. And they intervened into my situation, which in turn helped my entire family. And so for me, he was a hero. Not only, he was also my math teacher, and he made math a total blast. He told us all kinds of silly stories and analogies that made algebra look like a joke. And so his students had high performance, and many people rushed and flocked him even after his official role inside the school, the public school he worked for, where I went to school. We seeked him out for classes, extra classes on the evenings and the weekends, and he was paid thousands of dollars. And he would go class after class after class just because he was so relatable. He was so caring. He was so loving. And also he was filled with humor and patience to see each of his students learn. So that is my favorite teacher and my why. So a good teacher must have some basic skills. I'm sure we all can agree, right? We need teaching skills, of course. And that's why we go to formal schools. Here in the US, teachers their program is very different and very rigid. It's not just a common degree. But in Guyana, we actually have a special college that is only for teachers, which I highly appreciated that. So we need to know ages and stages of human development. And so I remember when I was being trained earlier on, my professor started us off with from 0 to all the way up. And so 0 meaning conception, right? We must, like children. I am meeting people in my journey these recent years that just really like having the long summer break so they can go on vacation with their family. And I'm not sure they really like kids. We must like children, and we must, most importantly, be able to see the world through the eyes of a child sometimes. Most times, we must be able to get down on their level and put ourselves in their shoes for a little bit and see how they see the world and how they see us and how they see life, so we can provide the necessary support to nurture who that person is, that upcoming person. So we're going to dive right into the top 10 keys to being a successful teacher. So what does a successful teacher need? I mean, there's so many things we can talk about. So I picked out 10 for us. And if you're taking notes, the first one is a good, successful teacher needs to keep a growth mindset with a positive attitude. Like, what can you do if you're just pessimistic all the time? You're not going to inspire anyone. I think the first thing about a teacher is that they connect with students and the families at a level where they're understanding and they're open to learning about that child and their family and who they are, so they can effectively plan and create a classroom environment and lessons for them. The most successful teachers share some very common characteristics. So number one, that growth fixed mindset, that mindset that says, I am open to learning and evolving. Or do you have a mindset where you're like, it's either my way or the highway, and what I know, what I've learned is the best thing for everyone, and you're just stuck in old ways of being and doing? I don't think that would serve us well. We must expect positive outcomes for all of our students and our initiatives in the classroom, and I would say outside the classroom also. We must have an openness to learning from our students and their families, learning from our colleagues, and just staying in a place of learning. We must leave room in our lesson plans for the student to teach us as well. We must be flexible with planning by including the student in the process of planning. So it's allowing those questions and answers that stem from the day before to adapt our lessons. It's when we know we're going to move into a certain subject area, we are going to study countries around the world. What do you want to learn about countries around the world? Even in the pre-K classroom, we're going to study letter A. What kind of things do you want to learn? And so you're including those students in the process, right? The next tip I have, or key that I would believe it's important for a teacher, is having high expectations. I'm sorry if let's see. Yep, here we go. Yes, it's having that high expectation for your students. Students can tell what we truly think of them, even if we don't say a word. We should strive to raise the bar for our students always. If we expect less effort, we will receive less effort. I remember mentoring teachers in my previous years, and as the number of students that come into our general ed classrooms became increasingly so, where we're mixing, and I strongly support the combination of children that have different needs to be in the classroom with the general eds of students who might not have any special need. And so as we begin to up the number of students we have in the classroom, and we're looking at students with from mild to severe, being mildly or severely on the autistic spectrum, I see teachers' eyes go like, why did you put him in my class? And I'm like, well, we're inclusive. So, but the approach when you come up with, why did you put him in my class? Look at what's going to happen. He's going to tear everything down. He's not listening. If you have that even thought in your process, I can tell you, I've seen students at the youngest level in pre-K and kindergarten pick up on that energy, that you don't think they're a good fit to be in your classroom. And because of that preconceived notion in your head, your attitude towards those students is very different, and they could tell. So they just go back and forth with you. If they'll just give you a harder time. And the minute you're able to step back and believe that this child is just like every other child with just a different need from the other children, and how can I serve him? What do I need to know about him in order to help and support him? That child's attitude becomes different, and it kind of levels out a bit so that you can make progress in their learning and in their adaptation and becoming socially appropriate, so to speak, in that classroom. So we should work on an attitude that says that I know. Hold on, Zoom is telling me something here, Dr. Prashi.
Check the chat box, please.
Okay. So it is now, what time is it for you, Dr. Prashi?
Just 10 more minutes.
Okay, so we have about 10 more minutes. So I'm going to go over these keys with you pretty quickly. So let's just keep in mind to keep and have a high expectation for our students. The next one is to demonstrate consistency. And by demonstrating consistency, I mean, we must have and create a positive learning environment for our students. We should know what to expect from them each day, and they should know what to expect from us each day. We need to be consistent. This will create a safe learning environment for students, for them to be more likely to succeed. The next key is to maintain flexibility. And I put the picture intentionally of two women most likely stretching and doing yoga, but that's not the kind of flexibility I'm talking about. We're talking about the flexibility that allows for things to change. One of the tenets of teaching should be that everything is in a constant state of change, right? We know that we can never know who's going to have an outburst or if something's going to happen in the building, but even with those interruptions and disruptions being the norm, very few days are typical. So therefore, we must have a flexible attitude, and it is important not only for our stress levels, but also for our students who expect us to be in charge and take control of the situations always. The next top 10 key that I have for you is to exercise fairness. Many people confuse fairness with consistency. A consistent teacher is the same person from day to day. A fair teacher treats students equally in every situation, right? So don't confuse fairness with consistency. A fair teacher is the one who treats the students equally in every situation. The next key is respectful. Treat your students with respect. The basic first step to earn your students' respect is to simply be nice to them. Be nice to your students. I see so many teachers trying to be the force of law and order in the classroom and in the school environment. So we must be nice and respectful to everyone we come into contact as well. We must treat our students with absolute respect their voice and their opinions, give them a listening ear. Never mind, you have the last word. You want to let them know that you care what they think and how they feel. We must be respectful in the community. In our social media dealings, we don't want to get into squabbles and posting random things on our page, because we are respectful. We are the profession that sets the tone for all the other professions in the world. The next top 10 key is to know how to create partnerships with the families. And a lot of teachers feel like, I'm here to be a teacher, I'm here to teach the students. We need to know how to involve our families. Parents are the child's first teacher, and they know their child best. So the question is, you always want to guide you, is how can we involve the parents more? How can I get information and create a partnership and a relationship with the child's parent in order to better serve the child? Because in turn, you're not only serving the child, you're also serving the family. The next top 10 key I have for you is you continue to further and educate yourself. The first step to becoming a successful teacher is to never, ever, ever stop learning. There's always new research being published that examines ways to reach all different types of students. And so it's our job to keep up with that. By keeping up with current research, we feel armed with ideas and we're ready to face new and difficult situations. So continue to further your education. The next one is be organized. And I put a picture of a classroom that's well color coded. We can see the books are in line. I believe that being organized is one of the gifts of a teacher. And that's why even in other roles in our lives, everyone comes to us for organizational advice. And so it's important for us to keep structured. We have well-prepared lessons. However, realize that the day may not always go. We talked about our days most times as educators being unpredictable. Often a class may lead a lesson in a direction you weren't expecting, but it's important to be flexible and allow for the fluidity of learning by being organized. The next key that I have for you is to remind us of a few things that are important as we pursue our quest of being the most successful and effective and impactful teacher. Successful teaching is about developing good relationships with our students, right? Only when students respect you as a teacher will be able to learn. There will be times when students will give us pushback, parents will have difficulty with us, but how we approach the situation with, like I said, a growth mindset will be important. Successful teaching is about developing good relationships with students, keeping an open mind always, and being on the lookout for ways to develop and grow. So I believe that Dr. Prashi has signaled me with a technical difficulty. So what I'm going to ask for is for us to consider these tips that I provide you today. And with any questions, when we meet for our next session, we can go over any questions and talk about any kind of qualities that you may think of that's important that I did not add. So that is it for right now in order for us to stay within what we're working with. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to connecting with you again tomorrow and then on Saturday. So if you want to connect with me, feel free to connect with me on any of these platforms. Instagram, LinkedIn is my favorite. And I want to say thank you so much. And that is all for today. I'm going to, Dr. Prashi, it's okay for me to stop recording?
Yeah. We're most welcome with the questions, or else you're available there on chat with Global Teacher Training Program, so they can also interact with you there as well.
Yes, I am on chat and I will be checking in from time to time. And so we can roll with that in the group. And then I will propose some of the other things that I have created for you today. And so you can have a look at that. And then if there's more questions, that works great for me. So thank you. This was a brief session, but I look forward to connecting with everyone tomorrow. Dr. Prashi, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alicia. Thanks a ton for today's session for the second module. And once again, we all will be catching up tomorrow with new things within second part of the same module, and again interacting with Dr. Alicia tomorrow once again with more participants, fortunately. So, all right then, till then, stay safe, stay healthy, take care, stay blessed. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.